Following the decision of the United Kingdom Parliamentarians to sanction officials who violated the rights of Nigerians to protest, the federal government of Nigeria yesterday said it was unperturbed by the resolutions of the UK Parliamentarians for sanctions against top Nigerian officials and security agents involved in the alleged violation of NSAS protesters' rights, as it did not represent the position of the British government. The UK parliamentarian decision was taken after the parliamentarians had considered a petition signed by 220,000 signatories in the aftermath of the alleged shootings of protesters at the Lekki toll gate on October 20, calling, among others, for the sanction against indicted Nigerian officials. Reacting to Monday's resolution, Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Mohammed, said the UK government will not sanction Nigerian officials based on a fake report. Meanwhile, the Pan-Yoruba Socio-Cultural Group, Afenifere, Arewa Consultative Forum, and the Pan-Niger Delta Forum, PANDEF, hailed the decision of the UK Parliament. So, we waited for this. It's finally come. The government has reacted through the Minister of Information and Culture. Says the UK government will not sanction Nigeria based on, a fake report. And that was just the parliamentarians doing their thing. So,
do I attempt a Dr. Abati impression? Or should I just be myself? I think I'll just be myself.
You're excellent.
Well, I think what the Minister of Information tried to do is draw a distinction between the words and actions of those parliamentarians and the official line of the UK government. How convincing that will be to most Nigerians, I'm not entirely sure, because like I said yesterday, for me, those proceedings were a national embarrassment, and that has to be acknowledged, I feel. This whole act of being unbothered, it doesn't wash as far as I'm concerned. It is a national shame that such an event occurred, that we still have not arrived at the truth. This happened on the 20th of October. By now, whoever was found culpable should be in the process of being prosecuted. But what we still have is this stonewall, this complete blanket denial. But I have to say that the federal government is really sticking to its guns on this issue, continuing to maintain that no such incident happened, that it's all fake news. It's really unconvincing, given that you have pointed this out, the judicial panel, the evidence adduced by the army was that same footage for which we were fined. So it really does beg a belief at this point. We need to acknowledge that this has happened. It's most unfortunate. An investigation will be conducted, a transparent investigation, and those culpable will be brought to book. Peaceful protest is not a crime in this country or in any other civilized country. So yes, it's not a official UK sanction in that sense, but it's still a public global censure of Nigeria.
So, speaking of that, yesterday I also brought about the point that there were also depositions in the Canadian Parliament. In fact, I think DJ Switch, which the Minister of Information and Culture have called a fraud and will be revealed in time soon to come, also made depositions at the Canadian Parliament among parliamentarians. And we're seeing these depositions here in Canada, the UK, and the likes. So, what's your take on all of this? Speaking about the shame it brings.
I'm just mortified. You know my take on this. I find it so embarrassing that we are here. You will recall the dark days of the Abacha junta when Nigeria got herself suspended from the Commonwealth of Nations, which was it's a rarity that happened. I believe there are only 3 countries that have been suspended. There was that. And this is reminiscent of that. It's so embarrassing that human rights abuses are still treated with such levity by the government, such that other countries have to force them to address it. It's terrible. And yes, and the report in this day, it's on the front cover of this day today, about this report you've just shared, also goes on to say that CNN has aired a second report on the Lekki shooting. This is in spite of the verbal condemnation by our Minister of Information, Alhaji Mohammed, and then an official written letter. CNN is also doubling down and insisting that protesters were shot.
And what CNN just did in that report was to show the footage of the judicial panel.
Yes.
What happened on Saturday that I saw for 2 hours, and how it corroborated when Brigadier General Taiwo did come out to say that it's rule of engagement also to carry live rounds, despite the fact that it took blank bullets there, and CNN just said, that's fair, that corroborates our report. and also the aerial video that shows the skirmishes. You know, that's the CCTV from the LCCI. You know, the aerial video that shows the skirmishes, people running around as a result of the shootings and things like that. They just showed those videos and they just showed it out there. So we're beginning to learn a lot about this, and in the coming days, it will become clearer and clearer.
We need to face the fact. This is not a figment of anybody's imagination. An incident happened and it was clearly untoward. And the more stringent the efforts are to bury it, the more suspicious it becomes. How many casualties were there? Because people are using the word massacre like the UK parliamentarians did. Some of us are using the word incident because we're trying to be circumspect. But we need to know exactly what happened, how many casualties were. It's just we need to know, and who gave the order. These are the questions that will not go away. The
most important questions. But we'll see how the judicial panel goes, because if for anything, we've been learning a lot from the judicial panel in the days to come, and we'll see more for other days to come. Thank you so much for your great insight as always, Tunde. That's all. Okay. So we still have 2 minutes, I am told.
So I want to talk to you about the Senate debate. You know, yesterday you were talking about whether or not we have robust debates in the Senate. What did you think of that Senate debate yesterday with the 1% VAT to be given to areas affected by the violent aftermath of the NSAS protest, and the senator from Northeast region standing up to say similar allocations should be made to victims of banditry, people who have lost property to banditry?
I mean, great debate. I'm really excited about that. That's what the parliament should do. Like the word implies, parlement. That was twisted into parliament. They should go out there and speak on behalf of their people. They should have robust debates. They should disagree. But concerning that issue, for me, it's still very iffy. Especially the person from the North that talked about banditry, that the same thing should be given. I want to ask, is there not a Northeast Development Commission?
My point exactly.
Is there a Northeast Development Commission that we hear of the mammoth corruption, that the corruption was just shown at the face value, and that case, we never heard a full-on investigation into that Northeast Development Commission corruption. We just heard of a certain amount of money bandied around that was frittered away in corruption. Even the NDDC we all heard in the public space, have there been investigation? Have people been prosecuted? As business not continued as usual?
The mics went off.
After the mics went off?
That was that.
So when you have debates like that, and for me, it's shocking that apart from that, I want to hear our parliamentarians debate what affects the common man. Because monies like that, 1%, yes, when it comes to the state, it's still frittered away in corruption. Yes, so it's a good debate, but for me, not good enough. I want to hear cases that affect the common man. I want to hear cases that affect women. I want to hear lawmakers debate the fact that we need to give a lot of women sanitary pads. Scotland led the way recently. Everybody gets free sanitary pads. Things that affect the people. I want to hear lawmakers debate. We need more schools in our area. Social investment. That's what we want in this country. All right, that's all we have on News Headlines. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, and Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Show. Take us on a great journey as regards African business this morning. It's great to have you, Rotus.
Morning, Rufai. Morning, Tundu.
Morning,
Yes. So we're looking at comments from the outcome of the MPC meeting that concluded yesterday. Of course, all parameters were held in place. The benchmark interest rate stayed at 11.5%, liquidity ratio at 30, asymmetric corridor plus 100 basis points, minus 700 basis points. Everything was in place. So what we're going to look at is some comments from Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele. He talked about, he was asked specific questions from journalists. He took questions from journalists. By the way, he's even today in Lagos, Central Bank office here in Lagos. He actually has a presser later today. Yeah. I think we'll cover that as well. But three things we're going to listen to now. One on the parallel markets, two on recession, and three on inflation. So we'll start first with his comments on a question about the parallel market exchange rate.
And indeed, I heard some analysts talking about the parallel market, saying that exchange rate is at 480. I want to say this, that it is unfortunate and really unfair that even analysts who are supposed to know will play with numbers and begin to determine the exchange rate of our currency using parallel market rates. For the information of everybody, parallel market, as far as we know it and the data that we have, is a shallow market in Nigeria with no more than 5% of market share. Parallel market, and quote me, is a tainted market in Nigeria where people who desire to deal in illegal foreign exchange transactions, including sourcing of FX cash for purpose of offering bribes, corruption, that is where they deal. And that is where people who are supposed to understand the implication of this on the economic activity on our country begin to go to television and begin to say that our exchange rate is 480. This is very unfortunate.
All right, now there was also, we'll address all this at once. Let's also quickly take a listen to here a question he was asked about the recession, when we expect a recovery. Let's listen to the Central Bank Governor, MFLA.
Recession or contraction in growth, in output, is what we have seen throughout the entire world as a result not only of drop in commodity prices, but because of the adverse consequences of the health crisis created by COVID-19. In some developed countries, during the first, second, and even the third quarter, we saw some of them even showing double-digit contraction in growth. But in Nigeria, what we've seen, during the second quarter, we saw a minus 6.1% contraction, and I will use pleasantly in third quarter, a reduction in output to 3.6% negative during the third quarter. Let me say that we are hopeful, and the Minister of Finance had addressed some gathering yesterday where she said that she's hopeful that during the first quarter of 2021, Nigeria will exit recession. Based on data available to the MPC from the CBN, we are somewhat cautiously optimistic that indeed, if we continue doing what we're doing and do more, that there's a likelihood that we will see some little positive output numbers in the fourth quarter of 2020. But I can say with some level of certainty as well that we are so certain that during the first quarter of 2021, we will exit the recession.
And finally, on inflation. Inflation, of course, is at 14.23%. Food inflation is over 17%. He was asked about inflation. Let's listen to what the governor had to say.
Well, you've heard everything that we're doing. But at this time, we felt, Monetary Policy Committee felt, yes, there are issues, growth, exchange rate, inflation, because interest rate is somewhat moderated. But we decided to, Monetary Policy felt that we should be looking more at exiting the recession. So what do we do to exit the recession is what was the main focus at this. And then to address the inflation side, we said it is better for us to look at attacking inflation from the supply side. Supply side how? Offer low interest rate to people. Offer low interest rate to corporates. Offer low interest rate to small businesses. So they can go to work. So they can employ people. By employing people, we see improvement in manufacturing and industrial output. When there's improvement in industrial and manufacturing output, what you will see is that supply for goods will increase, perhaps surpass demand, so that prices can come down and ultimately impact positively on inflation. That is the strategy monetary policy has decided unanimously to adopt. It's not my position. It's a position of 10 people, and it is a unanimous decision, and we feel Nigerians should please allow us, give this a chance, and let's see how this works.
All right. So, very, very robust press conference that the central bank governor gave yesterday. So on the three items that you talked about. So firstly, on the parallel markets, he is correct. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that goes on in the parallel market right now. 480 naira per dollar. That's a little unrealistic. If you were to carry out a transaction with your debit card, your Naira debit card in dollars, check the rate that your bank will use. It's probably about 390, maybe 395. There are a lot of fintech companies now that are offering virtual dollar cards that you use to pay for items in foreign exchange. If you check the way you pay in Naira and their service they provide to you, they'll use dollars to settle it. If you check the rates, it's probably about 380 something, 390. So 480, there's a lot of speculative activities going on that he refers to. You don't need KYC to be able to perform any activities in the parallel market. So, and he's correct that it's a shallow market. The 5% figure he mentioned of it being 5% of market share of the wider market. I guess that's data that the central bank has access to. I haven't really done any research on exactly how what the percentage is. But there is, so he's correct in that regard. He's very correct. However, there is a liquidity issue, right? If we use fuel as an example, what's the official rate for fuel? By 168, 169. If somebody, a young man on the side of the road comes to me and says, Rufai Tunde, would you like to buy fuel in a jerry can for 300 naira per litre? You'll laugh him off and drive away. But if there's scarcity tomorrow and fuel stations start to close down and there's long lines of fuel queues and you don't have fuel in your tank, and that same guy comes to you and says, will you buy fuel for 300? You probably buy it. Definitely. So, you know, black markets thrive on scarcity. While the central bank has done the best that they can, there is an element of scarcity to where that is probably fueling what we're seeing in the parallel markets, and it's diverging. But speculators they're in there.
I think speculators should just calm down.
Exactly.
I think they should just calm down. Let's not overheat the market.
Exactly.
Really.
Exactly. So that's what he's referring to. On the recession side of things, where he said he's optimistic about us exiting in the first quarter of 2021, that's going to depend on oil prices. I mean, oil prices are pretty much how we exited the last recession, right? And oil has climbed, I think it's about $46, $47 a barrel right now. I think based on Trump finally allowing Biden to move forward, the pick of Janet Yellen to be his new Treasury Secretary. And that's if she's confirmed by the Senate, which I think she will be. So there's all that optimism that possibly another stimulus will come through. So I think that's feeding into oil prices, right? So Nigeria has to hope for oil prices to continue to climb, which will bring in more revenue, which will for us, and then hopefully that allows us to exit the recession. Plus all the intervention funds that the central bank has put in healthcare, manufacturing for households. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we come out in Q1 2021. And then finally on inflation, you can see based on what the central bank governor said, it's cost-push inflation that we're seeing, where structural issues are driving up the cost of goods and so on, foods especially. So what he said is correct. By offering lower interest rates to corporates, to households, they can hopefully push outputs, stimulate aggregate demand and increase it to the point to where more outputs leads to more goods and services entering the market, which should hopefully bring prices down. However, as much as they've done, I mean, the United States put in, what, $2 trillion into stimulus? They still needed more money. So the thing is, what the market is saying, that, look, central bank, you're doing the best you can, and it shouldn't be all on the central bank's shoulders. On the fiscal side, federal government should be doing more to help as well. Central bank can't carry the entire country on their back. So it's hopefully they're saying, okay, look, we need more loans. You got to give more money out there. CBN is saying they're doing the best we can, and hopefully that should bring inflation.
Okay.
Lowering interest rates to stimulate the economy during a recession makes perfect sense. But do you find in practical terms that it's actually difficult to get a loan during a recession because creditors are really cautious in a recession?
Excellent. So you see, that's why it's the central bank. Their intervention rate was at 9%. They've lowered it down to 5%, cut it by 400 basis points. It is tough with the banks, but the central bank is doing what they can to pump their funds in there and try to stimulate the banks to lend. But it's hard. It's a good point.
And this plan to remove taxes off wage, how is it going to help, put in some liquidity in the economy at least? It should give some people leeway to spend.
You lower taxes, you increase disposable income, put more money in people's pockets, they spend it. Hopefully that...
So hopefully they come out to spend. But a lot of people pray that inflation doesn't fritter away the gains of those taxes anyway.
Exactly.
That's another party. But thank you so much, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you. All right, we'll move on to business update, global business update now with Michael Wilson from London. Great to have you, Michael.
Morning. So Asia Pacific markets actually quite bullish after Wall Street left on that sort of what they're calling a global recovery trade. Janet Yellen's appointment, yes, we talked about that yesterday. also progress on vaccines, and also progress on the transition from Trump to Biden, as it were, and that's seen. A lot of people got very excited about the Dow Jones breaking above 30,000, but it is just a number. It's significant, but what do you actually read into it? It could retreat in the next few days. We'll come on to that. S&P up 1.62%, Nasdaq up 1.3%, and so on. So the Nikkei, this is the important one, really, full of, we call them legacy industry stocks, you know what I mean, these kind of more traditional ones rather than tech stocks, that continue to outperform. Big rotation into those kind of stocks, and also into retail as well. So the Nikkei up well over 1%, almost 1.5% today. The only one that didn't really was China mainland stocks, which have retreated. They've got some nagging concerns in China about corporate bond defaults, and of course the US blacklisting of various companies. How that pans out under the Biden administration, who knows? That's one for the future. Hang Seng as well, doing reasonably okay. Singapore just 0.3% gain, but Australia as well, all ordinaries doing quite well. So Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, all heavy and cyclical industries, leisure and banks, they should continue, the view is, to outperform and outperform more tech-centric new economy markets of China, South Korea and Taiwan. It's not to say that the latter are not near the tops. Of course they are, because they make a huge amount of money. But if there is an orderly transition of power in the United States, and it does look like that at the moment, if there is a return to some sort of, how can I put it, international engagement, maybe COVID-19 vaccines as well being applied, and that will increase the pace of investor rotation. Plus, the most important thing, ultra loose monetary policy around the world, and so we're looking at light at the end of the tunnel, really. That seems to be the message from this week. That really handing over the Fed funds, to help this transition was a big boost. And if you remember, Mr. Trump was saying that voter fraud had taken place. That spooked some traders, but generally what we're feeling now is that that's sort of calmed down to a certain extent. The problem really is, I suppose, is the Thanksgiving holiday, which starts tomorrow. Actually, if you're in the United States, it starts tonight as people try to rush away. So they'll have a socially distanced turkey celebration, no doubt. Their minds may not be on COVID, although infection rates are still rising inexorably in the United States. Here, the Chancellor, the Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak, will be talking about a £4.3 billion plan to tackle the threat of mass unemployment. So this is the comprehensive spending review. The suspicion is there won't be, at this particular stage, much talk about tax rises. Those will have to come, but maybe these politicians will be out of the game by the time that nasty bits have to actually happen. But it will come up with some very scary numbers about how COVID has affected the economy, with lockdowns, nobody shopping, and of course weak tax revenues as well. UK public debt in August topping £2 trillion. That is a huge amount of money. So the lockdown in the UK has continued to take its toll on retail. As you imagine, the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, sorry about the initials, but that is a sort of bosses organisation. They come out with their view about retail, and it's the weakest reading in November since June. Again, unsurprising, because people have been locked down. By contrast, let me just quickly run through the commodity markets for you. As Reuters said, oil actually gaining hugely on this market optimism and so on. Plus OPEC Plus intending to increase or extend its production cuts. And so we got Brent at, I think we're looking at about 47 a barrel, and WTI at 44 barrels. So that's good news for countries that are dependent upon revenues from oil. Gold not doing too well, because people don't really want safe havens anymore. That, of course, could change tomorrow, as you well know. But keep an eye on Dr. Copper. Copper is doing very well indeed. Those sorts of precious metals are echoing the fact that there is now poised to be some global recovery. Not tomorrow, not next week, not before Christmas, but maybe sometime in 2021. But then again, the markets look forward. I did say that it's Thanksgiving Day tomorrow and Black Friday, of course, in the United States. So I suspect that the economic numbers will pass people by. But here, for what they are, in the United States, we're going to get durable goods, first sight of GDP figures, and also the jobless claims, because we normally get them on a Thursday, but obviously because Thursday's a holiday, we're getting them today, later on, tipped to fall from 742,000 to 730,000. Again, I suspect that all these numbers will get lost in the general fervour and excitement of getting home to one's family for Thanksgiving Day, which tends to dominate this particular part of the year as far as the United States.
Right, so thank you so much, Michael, for that. I just want to have a couple of questions. Number one will be, do you think there's an economic buoyancy returning to America and other parts of the world? Yesterday, President Macron of France gave that speech, said the confinement targeted dates on the 15th of December, vaccination will start in December, and there are a lot of talk about economic opening up in France again and potential of that. In America, for instance, 59 million people traveled last year during Thanksgiving. They're saying this year, even despite the pandemic, about 50 million people are expected to travel. So do you think things are warming up and opening up again for these economies?
I think they are. I mean, it would be foolish, I think, to make too much of one set of figures. But clearly, there's a feeling of optimism now. It's to do with what will be an availability of vaccine. You're absolutely right to point out this gap in the United States. They've still got rising number of COVID cases there, but there is a feeling that the economy is going to pull through. And it's actually, if you believe the numbers, and again, we'll see some today, if you believe the numbers and these sort of economic snapshots of what happens in the United States, it's showing an economy which is really getting underway again. And I think, as you were saying earlier on in your program, and also generally around the world, there's a feeling that there is some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, but still, it's far too early to get terribly excited. I am not personally terribly excited. I'm looking forward to a very, very different kind of Christmas, and not a huge amount of travel, and I suspect we'll see that's going to be the same in the United States. I'm sure people are going home to their families. Let's hope the social distancing actually works. If you think it does, I happen to think it does, and we'll see where we are from there. But generally speaking, there's an opening up. I feel as though the two significant points have been particularly about the United States. I'm sorry the axis of the business world happens to appear to revolve around the United States, but it does. And the fact is that we're seeing what we think now is going to be a smooth transition to a Joe Biden administration. We may see some kind of stimulus plan taking place in the United States, and it does certainly look as though Joe Biden will be having some sort of international engagement, which didn't happen under the Trump administration. So all looks fairly good, I would say, at the moment.
All right, the way of the world, just another quick question on inputs as regards Elon Musk. And Elon Musk now is the second world richest man. Tesla got on the S&P. This was a man that crashed his F1 McLaren. He bought about $1 million at a point in his life. But hey, second world richest man, Elon Musk, on the S&P now. What's your take on this?
What I think about it is that I'll believe the Tesla thing when we have enough electrical power to power electrical cars, enough batteries to give a decent journey life, quite honestly. And thirdly, the fact that if he meets his end of year targets in terms of car production, and we haven't had that yet, that is the investor test for Tesla, and that's a good one for me too, I think.
All right, the Model S does about 375 or 400 kilometers per hour. That's a sizable range anyway, but thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you for your time. I'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Aaron Akira join us up. right, welcome back. For all the updates on COVID-19, we've got Aaron Akerjalu with us here. Aaron, great to have you.
Yeah, good morning to you. Good morning, Rufai.
Pleasure.
Yes. And let's get started with the global outlook of COVID-19 today. And currently, we are close to 60 million confirmed cases. We are nearing that very green milestone. At the moment, it is well over 59,759,535. And the deaths right now is still over 1 million plus now. 1.4 million, 9,208. If they can actually help us with the world figures, it actually shows the projection certainly, and it's not looking good for the global outlook of COVID-19. We thought it was slowing down, although numbers are actually decreasing in Africa. Certainly in the world, we're still seeing numbers actually coming in their droves. You can see there, well over high, plus 2% in the last 24 hours with 502,383 coming in, while 10,815 people have died in the last 24 hours. That actually just puts the context into it, up by 17% at the moment. So we're looking at this thing, it's not abating anytime soon. And as we're getting closer to Christmas, where everybody wants to celebrate, especially those in Europe and in the US, and even in the UK, it's actually, they need to be very, very cautious. And in the US, they're facing a different dilemma altogether, because if they can actually help us with the figures, it actually explains it even further, as red flags and red alerts have been going out everywhere. We know we have more than 12.6 million cases in the US. The deaths are over 250,000, about 259,832, up by 61%. But now, this is the worrying statistics, is the number of hospitalized patients. It's at the highest peak at the moment, 88,080. That's up by 48%. And states are beginning to put out red alerts that they are running out of bed spaces. As early as next week, some states are saying they will be out of bed spaces and they might not be able to contain the number of people that are coming in with severe cases of COVID-19 in their state. So you look at that, the US at a very, very massive tipping point at the moment. We hope Joe Biden can probably work a miracle. This is not the best time to be president because he has a lot in his plate. He's trying to still handle all these other things. But first of all, ensuring that lives are there to even be governed is very, very key. And let's see what happens in the coming days and in the coming weeks. We've been talking about this, and this is why, for maybe not in this part of the world for now, but in places like the UK and even in the US, the vaccine is very expedient. If they can get a vaccine that can probably mitigate some of these losses, it will go a long way in helping them probably cushion the effect. We know that in Mexico, for example, there are talks about the emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine. And let's see how that happens. There are talks that would actually, the talks started yesterday and it will continue today. And if the talks are positive, who knows? By the 10th of December, as early as the 10th of December, they might start giving a jab to people in Mexico. We're not sure of when the U.S. when it will start in the U.S. because they've told Pfizer that the only time they will listen to their appeal and also the filings for the emergency use authorization will be on the 10th of December. So it's still a long stretch ahead. And I think they are being very cautious. The FDA in the U.S., even though they know that they are seeing things actually turn south for them, they are still being very cautious because, trust me, nobody will want to have an epidemic or even worse in their hands from the side effects from the vaccine. So we look at all this, and when you put it into context, it's not looking good. But before I go, if they can actually just help us with the COVID slides, it actually explains, because we know that a lot of, not just millions, billions have been spent on the Pfizer vaccines and the rest of them, and certainly we are expecting that these countries would it actually breaks down the country's use for some of these vaccines and who is getting what. We know that COVAX is our hope of getting a vaccine in this part of the continent, because other countries have actually spent quite a lot in trying to get a vaccine for themselves. And the US and the UK have spent a lot. If you look at the Oxford vaccine, if I can actually slide down, you can see there, looking at the vaccine rates, the AstraZeneca has been oversubscribed by several people. The EU have actually subscribed for close to about 400 million doses of that vaccine. In the US, they've oversubscribed, paid quite a lot, over billions for the AstraZeneca vaccine. Over 500 million of those doses will be given to them when it finally passes all the bottlenecks. You can actually see Moderna also. Canada has actually ordered over 100 million. Japan has ordered over close to about 100 million. The EU has ordered close to about 100 million. The US has ordered 100 million for them. So you can actually see the breakdown there. Even the Pfizer vaccine, the US has also ordered another 100 million. And just on and on, the EU has ordered close to about 300 million of those vaccines. If they help us with the next slide now, you now see the breakdown for some of other countries, because we know that you can actually see there that Nigeria falls into that particular, if you look at the right side of the screen, that's COVAX column, where AstraZeneca would actually give some. I've actually pledged to give some to COVAX, and Novavax also has pledged to give some to COVAX. Sanofi GSK has pledged to give some to COVAX. Pfizer has pledged to give some to COVAX, but not as much as you can see the other countries that have actually been on that long queue and are hoping to get this vaccine. Let's hope ultimately that equitable distribution is what people have been talking about will actually happen with this vaccine.
And some countries are talking about production. I was reading a report this morning about India. India is saying we will do a sizable number for our citizens in India and also, export to other parts of the world. I think the conversation for us now should be, what can we learn from this experience? We need to obviously invest in research and development and science. We can't be celebrating our own that are going abroad to be part of Pfizer team and researching and things like that. It's a slap on our face as a country. We should be able to come back to our own university centers and make them hubs. Even if it's 2-3 Nigerian universities, this one should be known for research into vaccines, should be known for this and that. Because you see, when we keep talking about that talk about, Nigeria being a great nation, it starts with the use of science, technology, engineering, and maths. And we need to fix that sector. That was what Lee Kuan Yew argued in his book, From Third World to First World. He says, people study humanities. But what does humanity move the economy? So he deliberately set up a quota for science, technology, engineering, and maths to be able to upscale the Singaporean economy. And that was how they thrived. So we need to look at it critically.
To add to what you said, we also have to learn the lesson that happened when supply chains were threatened all over the world with the lockdown, and we were stuck, quite frankly. We need to work on our own local pharmaceuticals. But what you were saying about America, I'm learning such an awful lot about human nature during this pandemic. With the kind of staggering statistics you just reeled off this morning, why are Americans traveling in their droves for Thanksgiving? What on earth are they thinking?
Americans like their holidays. And it's a tradition that is ingrained in their fabric. They grew up with some of these holidays.
4th of July, Thanksgiving.
Yes, but it's so stubborn. At the risk of your life and the lives of your relatives.
Because the point is, some people leave to be with people. And if you not take that away from them, because probably they spend all their lives or the better part of their lives trying to make the money. And the only way to actually enjoy some of those mornings is to spend it with family. And if that's a tradition you were born into and you've grown up with, to have a shift in just a space of time, in a very short space of time, if this is concurrent over the years, if we see this pandemic actually stretch further, people will begin to maybe apply reason to their decisions. But for now, it's going to be hard to change human behavior overnight.
I think it's so bewildering.
And Thanksgiving. It's just shocking. I mean, I was watching the numbers this morning on MSNBC. It's projected that 50 million Americans will travel for Thanksgiving. And 59 million traveled last year when there was no pandemic. But despite the pandemic, it's just 9 million shy. So 50 million people.
I thought the instinct for survival was the strongest. Apparently not. Is that instinct to sit around the table and bond with your family? Wow.
I can imagine. Thank you so much, as always, Aaron.